Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
A poorly dressed man with sad eyes was walking down the street, paying no attention to others. The gray hair on his temples and deep wrinkles in the corners of his melancholy eyes testified eloquently that he suffered a lot. The local bums, with their intuition, immediately identified him as a man with a dark past and avoided him. Both his behavior and eyes indicated that he was unlikely to stay among a pack of misfits. He looked about 35 or even over 40. It was not that this strange man was untidy or that his bad habits had aged him prematurely. No, the man did not smoke and he had no problem with alcohol. He was tidy, even though he lived in the middle of nowhere and was dressed in rags. Unlike people forced to live a vagrant lifestyle, he kept his clothes clean. He washed everything in the river. There was an ugly scar on the face of this mysterious man, but no one knew about it, for it was hidden behind the stubble. He had an old leather cap pulled down over his eyes, which made him look frightening. Nothing seemed to worry this man. The man walking down the street saw a boy of about 10 riding his bicycle through a red light onto a roadway, and a huge truck rushing right at him. Compared to the car, the boy seemed like a tiny ant. The man's reaction was perfect. Grabbing the boy by the scruff of the neck, Joseph pulled the boy from under the truck's wheels at the last moment. The bicycle was much less fortunate. The driver, who had jumped out of the cab, shouted, "Idiot! Are you trying to kill yourself? Don't your parents care about you at all?" The kid squirmed and almost cried, and his savior looked at the driver with such a look that he hurried back into the truck. "But it wasn't my fault. If the truck hit a boy, I would have to face legal consequences," he grumbled. "People do not educate their children at all." "How are you? Is everything all right?" The man asked the boy when the truck finally drove away. "Why aren't you looking at the traffic lights at all? Bored with life, dummy? Have you ever heard of the rules of the road?" "I heard," the boy replied. "It's just that my bike is new, and I still haven't figured out how to drive it." "Cool bike." His savior shook his head. "But I'm afraid it can't be fixed." "I wanted to say, thank you, mister," the boy replied awkwardly. "But don't scold me, please, and I'll thank you for saving my life." "How can you thank me?" The bum grinned, noticing the expensive sports suit. "Probably he bought it with pocket money given by rich parents," he thought. "It's just, my father is a millionaire, seriously. He would make you rich if he knew you saved my life." "No way." "My father owns a chain of restaurants," the boy answered proudly. "And the biggest restaurant is in the center of the city. The old fairy tale, you know it? All of the city's high-class people hang out there. Anyway, let's go. He'll give you some money." "A restaurant," the man said thoughtfully. "A restaurant is a good thing." An evil glint flashed in his eyes, but the boy did not seem to notice it. Either he wanted to thank Joseph so much with his father's help, or to show off in front of this bum. The boy was persistent. Suddenly, the man felt sympathy for the boy. He was confident and talked well, like a little businessman, but still childishly sincere. "Of course," the millionaire's son exclaimed in a naive way. "Well, let's go. By the way, my name is Jeremy." The boy shook his savior's hand, and he answered, "Joe, well, let's go." The passers-by looked with interest at the strange couple, a poor man with a sad look and a well-dressed child who seemed too independent for his age. But neither of them noticed this. Both of them were immersed in their thoughts. One of the guards, glancing at Joe, said, "Get out of here, bum. You'll frighten all the guests. Don't you see, this is a luxury place." "Why are you talking to him?" Another security guard said, "Let's hit him a couple of times, and that's it." "No," said the boy firmly. "This man is with me." The guards looked at each other. They liked the owner's clever son very much. Jeremy had spoken to the security guards more than once. They had let the boy into their small office and answered all his questions. But this time, Jeremy was doing something strange. Why did he bring a bum to an expensive restaurant? "I should probably go," said Joe. "Well, goodbye, kid. Take care." "Wait on the bench." The kid shook his head. "I'll sort it out in a minute, okay?" "Hi, Dad," Jeremy said. "Oh, hi," his father replied with a smile. "What are you doing here?" "Dad, there's someone I'd like to talk to you about." The boy answered like an adult. "Who?" Mr. Ferdinand Lyons wondered. After listening to his son's story, he frowned. Jeremy interpreted his father's look in his own way. "Dad, are you angry about the bicycle?" "No, I'm not," Ferdinand answered in an exaggeratedly carefree tone. "We will buy you a new bicycle." "Don't," the son exclaimed. "You'd better help that mister. He's cool. He looks like an action movie star." "A bum," Dad laughed. "He doesn't look like the other bums. Look at him." "Oh no, son. I've got a lot of work to do. I'll let the manager handle this. That's my gratitude." "Well, think about it. What is money? Just a piece of paper that you got one day, and then it's gone the next. So I won't give him a fish. I'll give him a fishing rod." "What kind of fishing rod?" Jeremy didn't understand. "It's a saying. Well, that's it, son. I'm really busy. Tell that bum to wait by the check room and inform the security guards." "Whatever you say," the boy said happily. After seeing his son off, the restaurant owner called the manager. "Barnaby, come to the office. It's urgent." The manager arrived in 5 minutes. "Barnaby, go to the lobby. There, near the check room. There's a man, let's say a strange-looking man. Give him some dirty work, like a janitor or something. Provide him with a uniform and give him some instructions. Tell him to start tomorrow." "Got it, Ferdinand." The manager nodded and went downstairs. Even if he was surprised to see the bum in their luxury restaurant, he did not show it. In a few years of work in this restaurant, Barnaby had already learned the owner does nothing just for the sake of doing it. It is unlikely that Ferdinand employs a bum out of the goodness of his heart, but it is none of his business. Barnaby is the manager, but he has to obey orders. "Hello." He greeted the homeless man politely. "Hello." He nodded. "Well, Ferdinand Lyons told me to hire you as a janitor." "Ferdinand Lyons?" Joe asked. "Well, yes, the owner's name is Ferdinand Lyons." Joe felt as if he had been electrocuted at the mention of that name. Wasn't that the Ferdinand Lyons he'd remembered? He didn't want to meet an old acquaintance in such a miserable state. Joe agreed to accept the janitor's job. Although money was the last thing he was interested in, he knew he couldn't live without it. After all, he could not lead a vagrant life until the world's end. Otherwise, he would end his days somewhere in the city dump among a pile of garbage. "Well, that's fine," said the manager. "I'll give you your uniform now, and you can start tomorrow. Your shift starts at 7:30. Just don't be late. The boss doesn't like it." Joe nodded. "And by the way, you can live in the back room. Just don't steal any food from the kitchen. If the boss notices, he'll cut off your arm right away. He's dangerous, with criminal connections, so don't take the risk." Barnaby looked thoughtfully at Joe, but he only chuckled to himself. "Well, let's just say I'm no worse than your boss, except I experienced the school of life, which your boss couldn't even imagine." Joe got to the attic where he'd been living for the last couple of months. He was now eating the buns and milk he'd bought with the money he'd earned at the market for unloading the goods. By the way, the restaurant's back room wasn't the worst option. Autumn was coming, so sleeping in the attic was not a good idea, and warm food was guaranteed. At the thought of food, Joe swallowed his saliva. "Ferdinand Lyons. How many Ferdinand Lyons are there?" Waking up at 6 in the morning without an alarm clock, Joe washed his face with bottled water and ate the leftovers of last night's dinner. The attic was not chosen by chance. There was a clock board in front of the house where he lived. It was a half-hour walk to the restaurant where Joe was going to work. So at 7 o'clock, he headed to his workplace. He arrived at 7:30, and the kind-hearted cook offered him breakfast. "You must be hungry," she said sympathetically. A plump but very attractive woman in her 50s put a plate of scrambled eggs, warm buns, and coffee with milk in front of him. Joseph couldn't remember the last time he ate hot food, which was incredibly good. After thanking the woman, Joe started to work. He had to clean the yard and the restaurant halls and take the garbage out. He had to work the entire day, but Joe was not afraid. Labor, as we know, turned a monkey into a human being. Indeed, it can turn anyone into a human being. At first, everyone laughed at the new employee. "I wonder if he has any idea that you can flush a toilet." The staff giggled. Gradually, the joke stopped. The coworkers realized that the newcomer knew how to use not only the toilet, but also the cutlery. But most importantly, they felt his inner strength. When Joseph took his first shower in the staff bathroom, some people found him to be a very attractive man. "He's handsome," Valerie, the waitress, noticed. "So brutal." "So what are you waiting for?" Jean, her shiftmate, winked. "Go ahead, only he's obviously very dangerous." "Yeah," Valerie agreed. "Something is wrong with him. I don't know, some dangerous vibe. But that's so attractive, isn't it?" "I guess so." One of the guards, Andrew, seeing the mysterious employee in the t-shirt he had bought at a secondhand store, wanted to joke that now all the girls would want him. But beneath the t-shirt, he saw large muscles, so the guard preferred to remain silent. "He is a big, strong guy," thought Andrew. "He should work in security, not cleaning the yard and taking out the scraps. But it's better not to mess with him." Ferdinand Lyons sat on the red leather sofa of the luxury men's club, the Firebird, and looked at the dancers. "They are so hot," he thought. The man winked at the gorgeous mulatto in a golden microscopic outfit, and she began to move more actively. To please the owner of the restaurant chain meant to be invited to one of his restaurants and maybe to get a lot of money. The other dancers also moved closer to Mr. Lyons. Beautiful ladies danced around the rich guest, and he was amused by this. "Come on, ladies." Ferdinand encouraged them, sipping an expensive cognac. "Make your daddy happy." He was well aware that the beauties were expecting an extra payment, and although Ferdinand rewarded some of them only with dinner in his restaurant, and even if he gave money, it was almost nothing, the girls tried their best. It's simple. To have dinner at the old fairy tale restaurant and spend a hot night with its owner was considered very cool among the club's female employees. Mr. Lyons liked it, so he was a regular customer. Ferdinand Lyons partied as if he had a schedule. On Mondays, the man was often seen in the casino. On Tuesdays, he liked to visit the Priestess of Love. And on Fridays, he visited this club. The rest of the week, he spent his time in saunas. Family and work were not high on the restaurant owner's list of priorities. So what? He would answer his wife when she rebuked Ferdinand for not spending enough time with them. "I provide for you. I give you everything you want. Your beauty salons, trips to the resorts, prestigious clubs, activities, workshops for my son, and other trappings of this beautiful life. Isn't it enough?" The dearest spouse only sighed heavily. There was a time when Mr. Lyons worked hard and got very little money. Now he can do whatever he wants. Why work hard if there are specifically trained people to do it? During a month of work, the restaurant owner and the bum hired as a janitor never crossed paths. Moreover, Ferdinand forgot about him. Women, gambling, and power are his life principle. Why would he think of a bum? He just didn't notice such people. In the meantime, Joe had made friends with the guards and sometimes spent his evenings in their office. By the way, they were the first to notice that he was a decent guy. "Does the boss ever come to the restaurant?" he asked Edgar one day. "What would he be doing here?" The guard grinned. "The money comes in. What else does he need? Sometimes he checks on his staff, but that happens so rarely that the staff may only see him after 6 months. He lives for pleasure and cheats on his wife, even though she is gorgeous. He spends his nights in saunas and casinos." "But he has a son," said Joe. "What kind of example is he giving him?" "He doesn't care about his son either. Once, 3 years ago, his wife was in the hospital and he took the kid here with him. He was in the office having fun with another girl, and the boy decided to swim in the fountain. In autumn, I took him out myself." Joseph already knew Ferdinand Lyons had owned a chain of restaurants in different parts of the city for years. The boss had started his business with a small restaurant that was in the suburbs. "The interesting thing is that he didn't begin alone," said another security guard, Maurice. "There was another companion, some orphan, and they said he was very smart, that his companion created the whole business. He was the one who got the business up and running." "And where is this companion now?" Joseph asked. "He's gone." Maurice shrugged. "It was about 10 years ago. I hadn't worked with him yet. I think he went to jail for some kind of fraud. Or maybe Ferdinand set him up or did something worse." Joe went cold. The more information he learned about the manager, the less he liked the situation. But no one could have imagined that he, Joseph Darley, was the companion who had gone to jail for some fraud. Except he hadn't committed any fraud. He couldn't fall asleep, so he decided to watch TV. He looked at the screen but didn't see anything. Joseph brought back memories. Ferdinand Lyons and Joseph Darley had grown up in the same orphanage. The caregivers noticed that they were so different, and it was true. Ferdinand was cunning and shrewd, and Joseph was honest and sincere. Later, people considered him a very smart guy. Nevertheless, the two were together always and everywhere. Some have noted that Ferdinand was like a clinging fish. Joseph was gifted with a mathematical mind. In addition, he had been interested in computers since childhood. He didn't need to memorize mathematical formulas, and boring geometry and physics tasks were fun puzzles for Joseph Darley. The more difficult, the better. Joe participated in city Olympiads, making him the pride and joy of the orphanage. The kid has a bright future, math teacher Michael Price said. It would be great, but, sighed the vice principal. Is something wrong? The math teacher asked. Anything can happen, Mrs. Olivia Parks answered evasively. For example, friends who are worse than enemies. Ferdinand Lyons never made an effort to study well. Why, when there is a clever friend who will let you copy homework and everything else? After graduating from kindergarten, Ferdinand suggested, let's start a business. What kind of business? Joseph asked skeptically. We don't have any money. Besides, we have no connections and no knowledge in this field. Well, we can earn some money, and connections and knowledge are a matter of experience. Think of how many legendary rich people started from scratch. Rockefeller and Bill Gates. The examples are really convincing, so Joe responded, maybe you are right. The guys unloaded wagons and goods in stores, moonlighted at the market and construction sites, and accumulated the right amount of money. Now, they only needed to find the right building, furnish it, and finally start their business. The future partners began to look for a building. They found a suitable property only a month later. It was an old, small building on the outskirts of the city. It was cheap, so it was perfect for starting a restaurant business. After bargaining, the guys bought it for a reasonable price, so that there was money to buy tables, chairs, and utensils. There was no money for a designer, so they had to do it themselves. They visited all the second-hand stores and flea markets and bought a kerosene lamp, antlers, a heavy cast iron, a cuckoo clock, and other unusual items. That is how the idea of decorating the restaurant in the old style was born. By the way, the present restaurant, the Old Fairy Tale, is designed in the vintage style. Only now it was a designer's work, which cost a lot of money. To Ferdinand and Joseph's surprise, the suburban restaurant became popular. By today's standards, it was more like a cafe, but the young, ambitious, energetic guys knew it was the first step on the way to wealth and success. And Joseph and Ferdinand didn't just climb the ladder, they confidently stood on it. Joseph did the bookkeeping, accounting, and advertising. In fact, he was the man behind the restaurant. Ferdinand was, as he proudly called himself, the strategist. My job is to develop tactics and find the right acquaintances. He said, your job is to use your brain. That's what Joseph did, but he had some doubts about the right acquaintances his companions was making. Once, he saw a man of criminal appearance in a restaurant, and Joseph expressed doubts about his reputation, but his friend and companion only laughed. Well, don't think that wealthy man in Gucci suits would start cooperating with us right away. No, Joseph didn't think so, but this man was suspicious. Calm down, everything will be fine, said Ferdinand, and he added in a serious tone, remember, your job is to use your brain and mine. And the companion was silent and then laughed again, probably to hide the slight threat that was inadvertently sounded in Ferdinand's voice. However, the owners of the restaurant were not only engaged in a legitimate business. Yes, that has happened. You can't enter the world of big business without getting dirty. So Joseph knew his friend was right. Perhaps business needs people like that guy. As time passed, the restaurant gained regular customers. The restaurant began to bring the owners a decent income, and the companies began to think about expanding the chain. And then Joe fell in love. His fiancée was a modest and beautiful girl named Veronica. That special day, the beautiful brunette with amazing blue eyes was sitting in a restaurant, and as it seemed to Joseph, she was upset about something. The girl had ordered pistachio ice cream, but she only ate a few spoonfuls. The ice cream had already melted, but the beauty didn't seem to notice it. The phone rang from her purse. She looked at the display, frowned, and then rejected the call. Joe had never believed in love at first sight, but now he felt a strange new feeling. He immediately developed a plan of seduction. It was not really unusual, but being a smart guy, he knew that the main thing was to start, and then everything would go as smoothly as possible. Do you mind if I sit at your table? He asked. The girl indifferently shook her head. After a minute of silence, Joe said, You are so beautiful, but so sad. How is that possible? As you see, it happens, she answered in the same indifferent tone. The girl obviously didn't want to talk to anyone, so Joseph didn't bother her. He finished his coffee and went outside. Half an hour later, he returned with a bouquet of scarlet roses and a small, snow-white teddy bear with an elegant bow to match the flowers. Pretty flowers for a pretty girl, he said with a smile. If those flowers can't cheer you up, I'll jump off the roof. Veronica smiled slightly. Do you care that much about my mood? I can't see girls being sad, Joseph said, and added, Well, not all of them, only the most beautiful ones. So what made the beautiful lady sad? It's personal, she answered. So it's not worth you jumping off the roof. Did somebody hurt you? Then I'll find them right now and challenge him to a duel. Don't get your hands dirty, she sighed. Joseph, politely skipping this phrase past his ears, asked, What is your name, if it's not a secret? Veronica. Well, I'm Joseph. How do you like the restaurant? It's fine. Good food, reasonable prices. What else does a guest need? Yes. The man agreed, remembering how Ferdinand grumbled about the need to raise the prices. You know, Veronica, the restaurant closes in half an hour. Can I give you a ride? Is that convenient? Where do you live? The girl named the district where she lived. Joseph had to go in a completely different direction, but he cheerfully answered, "Oh, wonderful, it's on my way." Joseph gallantly opened the door of his Toyota for her, and they drove off. On the way, they got to talking. Veronica wanted to tell someone about her feelings, so she told Joe that she had caught her beloved in bed with her best friend. He preferred not to say anything. What could he say? "Veronica," said Joe when they arrived at the house where she lived. "Perhaps you are not up to it now, but would you like to have dinner with me at the same restaurant tomorrow?" "Oh no, I can't tomorrow," she said with regret. "Well, what about the day after tomorrow?" "The day after tomorrow would be fine," she said. Joseph was as happy as a child. The restaurant hall was decorated with flowers and balloons in pastel colors. Joe was looking through the CDs and figuring out what music to choose for a romantic night. "You are so romantic," Ferdinand noticed when the companion informed him of his plans. "I wonder who the girl is that you're trying so hard for." "I hope you will meet her at our wedding party," Joseph said. "Oh, really?" "Yes, she's a gorgeous girl, and she's not slutty. She is very modest and clever. There are not many girls like Veronica." "Well, I'm happy for you, my friend, honestly, happy." Ferdinand changed girls like gloves. "I don't see the point in living with one girl. There are so many beauties for all tastes," he said. And Joseph wanted to find his one and his only soulmate. Although there had been parties and one-night stand girls he met at the nightclubs. But Joe, unlike his friend and business partner, had a bad feeling after such parties. In the morning, seeing off another night guest, Joseph always waited impatiently for her to leave. The ladies were eager to leave their phone numbers, but Joe, having honestly recorded the contact, deleted it immediately after they left. A few such nights were enough for the guy to realize, no, this was not for him. So he stopped going to clubs. And when they relaxed in the sauna, he preferred to avoid the company of beautiful girls. He'd rather wait for his one and only, and it seemed Joseph had met her. Joe and Veronica were at the restaurant until midnight. "Oh, the restaurant will be closing soon," she exclaimed. "It won't." Joseph shook his head with a smile. "It is my restaurant." "Is it yours? Are you the owner of the restaurant?" Veronica asked incredulously. "Yes. Don't you think I look like an entrepreneur? Well, this is my first business." "No, it's just you're so young. Other people are only graduating from university at your age." "Well, I had a different start. My business partner and I grew up in an orphanage, so we didn't have time to wait. Once we graduated from the orphanage, we decided to act." "Well, what can I say? Well done." That's how Joseph and Veronica's romance began. Joe wanted to be better when he was next to Veronica. He wanted to be kinder and more honest. One day, the girl said to her lover, "You need to get an education. It's cool that you already have a business, but business is a fickle thing." "Oh, come on, don't jinx it," Joe exclaimed. "Well, you can't be afraid all your life and rely on luck. No kidding. Education is always valuable. For example, the faculty of economics, at least part-time. What if life turns out to be so bad that you have to look for a new job?" Actually, she's right. Joseph thought and decided to enroll in economics. A buddy grumbled that Veronica was manipulating Joe. "She's not manipulating," he disagreed. "She is completely right. By the way, my Veronica is not only beautiful, but also smart." His friend and business partner just shook his head. The logical conclusion of this beautiful romance was a magnificent wedding. Ferdinand was the guest of honor. It couldn't be any other way. At first, there was only a few employees in the restaurant. The partners were bartenders, waiters, administrators, security guards, and managers. Over time, they hired 2 bartenders and 2 waitresses. But as the restaurant was successful, thoughts of the next phase began to arise more often. The long-awaited expansion of the business was a real joy and the beginning of a new story that lasted for years. "I think I should lead the restaurant," Ferdinand once said. "Why not me? And actually, what's wrong with owning it in shares?" his partner asked. Joseph asked in a calm tone, but everything inside him was almost boiling. He was the reason the restaurant was a civilized, decent place. If it weren't for Joe, the restaurant, which had moved into a decent neighborhood after the expansion, would have long ago become a haven for every thug in the city. "Everything is wrong," he answered. "I found the right people, and what did you do?" "And I did the paperwork, the bookkeeping, the organizational stuff, the advertising. I dealt with the issues of the reputation of our business." Joseph interrupted him firmly. "If that's the case, I should lead the restaurant." "Reputation? What the hell are you talking about?" Ferdinand got angry. "Money is our reputation. It rules the world." "So you made the money and I did nothing. Is that what you're trying to say?" "That's not what I said. But try to understand it. A tough, decisive person should run the business. You don't have those qualities." "Seriously, we just probably demonstrate those qualities in different ways." "Maybe." Ferdinand calmed down and added in a conciliatory tone, "Anyway, we should think it over. Well, such things can't be solved quickly." Joseph had nothing to say to that. "Let's talk about it tomorrow," he went on, "when we have a clear head. We can't come to any agreement now. It's late. I'm tired." "Okay," Joe said. He was as tired as Ferdinand. The next day, when Joseph arrived at work, the tax authorities and police came to the restaurant. "What is going on?" he asked. "Joseph Darley," a man with a stern look asked him. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" "Are you in charge of accounting and taxation?" "And for the rest of the documentation." He nodded. His cell phone rang. "Excuse me, can I answer it? My wife is calling." Yes, of course. Darling, I need to tell you something, Veronica said in a mysterious voice. Veronica, honey, let me call you back later, okay? I have a meeting now. So what happened? He turned to his interlocutor. Joseph Darley, you are charged with illegal account cashing. In other words, money laundering, as well as transactions with fake persons, which is also illegal. What nonsense! There must be some mistake, he exclaimed and looked at Ferdinand. Of course, it's a mistake, said the latter. Joe, don't worry, they'll sort it out. I'll get a lawyer and get it sorted. Your knowledge of computer programs allows you to make transactions, said the representative of law enforcement thoughtfully. Well, it's easy for a smart guy like you to set up a fake deal. Why would I set myself up so stupidly? Joseph grinned. Well, shit happens, the interlocutor said. The court finds guilty according to the article. Joe heard fragments of phrases. He felt as if it was just a nightmare, but the last phrase finally woke him up. Sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. After the sentence was pronounced, his wife fainted. Veronica, he shouted, instinctively leaning towards his wife. Someone loses and someone finds, thought Ferdinand Lyons blissfully as he lounged beside the swimming pool. And he wasn't used to losing, only finding. Anyone who knows him well will tell you nothing will stop Ferdinand Lyons in the pursuit of his goals. When he began taking his first steps in the business, in contrast to Joe, he learned there can be no friends, relatives, and other sentimental nonsense. There are only the right people. And now he is the owner of a restaurant chain, a millionaire. He lives happily ever after, and he is on top of the world. He has a beautiful wife, a clever son, and all the entertainment available to a man of his rank. All of Mr. Lyons' restaurants were run by managers, people with college degrees, and experience in the restaurant business. Each manager was solely responsible for the establishment he was entrusted with. So they worked their butts off. This is where I keep them all, Mr. Lyons told his friends in the business community, clenching his fist. Ferdinand sometimes supervised his restaurant managers and was satisfied with their work results. Profits were going up, which meant everything was going right. He only needed to supervise the managers, and they would supervise the rest of the staff to make sure they were doing their job properly. But lately, the numbers have been getting worse. Even the old fairy tale, which was successfully prospering even during the recession. Anything could be the reason for the decrease in profits. The machinations of longtime competitors, or the newly opened competitor restaurants. Also, it could be just a crisis. Ferdinand will check if the competitors have done anything wrong, and if someone really decided to screw him over, Ferdinand will punish them harshly. He can't fight the crisis, but what prevents him from organizing some anti-crisis action? However, the experienced entrepreneur realized he should check every restaurant first. As experience has shown, most often the problem was simple. Someone steals. So the restaurant owner decided to install video cameras in every restaurant. And one day, while watching the footage, Ferdinand saw some homeless guy. Who the hell is that? He thought, puzzled, then remembered that a month ago he had hired a janitor at Jeremy's request. According to his son, he was a bum. Yes, that's right, the main restaurant. Ferdinand wouldn't have paid attention, but the bum's face seemed familiar to him. All bums look alike. He finally decided. Ferdinand was going to Greece. A business trip, he explained to his wife, though she didn't ask. The Lyons spouses had long existed apart from each other, more like neighbors, and both of them were fine with it. The husband was involved in business, the wife in housekeeping, and her son, and both of them had their own lives. Ferdinand went overseas. A couple of days later, Jeremy told his mother. "Mommy," said the boy, "let's go to Daddy's restaurant. Well, he's in Greece now, so we can supervise the work for him." "Wow, I have a real boss growing up." Mother laughed. "But Daddy has managers in every restaurant." "So we'll supervise them. That's what Daddy does." The wife of one of the most successful businessmen in the city adored her son and was proud that Jeremy was growing up smart beyond his years. Mrs. Lyons had been staying at home lately, and she was bored, so she said, "All right, let's do it." She laughed. Joseph cleaned up the terrace after the wedding party. Everything was covered with rose petals, rice, and coins. And then he went to the back room. In the lobby, he saw Jeremy. The boy was chatting with the guard about something. "Hello, Joe," he exclaimed cheerfully when he saw Joseph and held out his hand. "Well, hello." Joseph responded to the handshake and asked, "How are you?" "I'm fine. I'm going to play chess with Maurice." "Sounds great," he said. "Would you like to join us?" Maurice suggested. "I can't yet," said Joseph regretfully and went away. He had no idea who he was going to meet in 5 minutes. "Veronica!" Joseph exclaimed. His heart nearly jumped out of his chest with excitement. As if hypnotized, Joseph walked over to Veronica and embraced her. The woman looked at the attractive man in the t-shirt with perplexity and almost fainted. Veronica was standing in front of her first husband, who had died in jail many years ago. Well, that's what she thought. "Joe? Are you alive?" "Why should I be dead?" The man was confused. "Where can we talk?" Veronica looked at her ex-husband, and the events that had happened 10 years ago flashed before her eyes. She had never liked her husband's friend and companion, and she had told him about it more than once. And it was not that Ferdinand occasionally glanced at her greedily and shamelessly. Just an ordinary womanizer who saw another trophy. Though, that said a lot about her husband's friend. If a man is looking at a friend's wife like that, who knows what else he can do? Veronica never told Joe about the way Mr. Lyons looked at her, but she wanted to warn her husband. "Joe, why don't you buy your share and run it the way you want?" she said one day. Well, she didn't trust Ferdinand, and Joseph had once mentioned that he didn't like the people Ferdinand found, as well as he didn't like his style of work. "I thought about it, but it's very troublesome and expensive. Besides, we already have a lot of regular customers. There will definitely be a question of who is going to look for a new building. I guess that would be me. Not fun. Veronica shuddered. She knew Ferdinand wouldn't give up. She was also afraid that he might take revenge on her husband later. On that unfortunate day, Joseph came home nervous. When Veronica asked what had happened, he told her about his conversation with Ferdinand. Veronica already had a bad feeling. The next day, Joe was arrested. Veronica was lying on the bed, covered with a blanket, staring blankly at the ceiling. She never touched the cup of tea her caring mother brought her. "I can't believe it," she whispered, and her eyes filled with tears. "No, I just can't believe it." "But it's been known for a long time," replied her mother. "Business and crime are always connected. Don't you understand that?" "Joseph has never been involved in crime. He has always tried to work according to the law," sobbed Veronica. "I guess he didn't try hard enough," Paula sighed. Frankly, she didn't want to believe that her son-in-law was capable of such a thing, but his guilt was proven, and her daughter couldn't be an objective judge on the situation right now. Love is blind, as we know. "Mom, I'm sorry, but I want to be alone," said Veronica tiredly. "I'm going to sleep. By the way, did you tell him?" "No, I did not. I fainted. And when I woke up, Joe had already been taken away." Paula left and Veronica fell asleep. But she didn't get any sleep. Through her sleep, the young woman heard her cell phone ring. Ferdinand Lyons. He was the last person she wanted to talk to right now. However, he could help her. For some reason, Veronica was not allowed to see Joseph, but Ferdinand could come and see him at any time. He said he could see Joseph as a business partner. "Hello, Veronica," said Ferdinand with sympathy in his voice. "Hello." "Can we meet? We need to talk." "Well, I'm going to Joseph's tomorrow. Maybe there's something you'd like to tell him. It's not convenient to talk about it over the phone." "Okay, come over," she replied indifferently. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Is there really nothing you can do?" Veronica asked in despair. Ferdinand shook his head. "It seems not. The lawyers couldn't do anything, but I won't give up. I'll do everything possible and impossible. This friendship is priceless to me." "Thank you," said Veronica, and kissed him on the cheek with gratitude. "You're welcome," he said with embarrassment. "What do you mean they didn't let you talk to me?" Joseph exclaimed in shock. "That's what Ferdinand told me," his ex-wife whispered. "You were my wife. They should have let us meet." And then Joseph remembered his conversation with someone he thought was his friend. But obviously, he was wrong. "Veronica is in a very bad condition right now," Ferdinand said when the friends met. "I don't think she should see you now. When she comes to her senses, they will let you see her. But I don't know how to tell you." "Just tell it like it is." "She doesn't want to see you." "Well, that's understandable, but please take care of her." "You don't have to worry about that." Veronica never wrote him even a word. Joseph thought that his ex-wife had decided to get rid of the criminal, and it turned out that the girl thought he was dead. There was no need to ask who told her about that, but something really tried to kill Joseph. At the time, he thought it was an accident. After informing Veronica of her husband's death, Ferdinand asked her to marry him. "Why should you be a widow?" her husband's friend and business partner asked. "You'll have your baby soon. I will give the child my last name and accept him as my own child." "As his own?" Joseph said slowly. "Yes, Joe, when you were convicted, I was pregnant. I guess Ferdinand didn't tell you that." The ex-husband only cried, but Veronica didn't notice it. She sank into bitter memories. "Ferdinand, can I ask you a favor?" she said on the day her husband's companion came to see her. Veronica hesitated until the last moment. She didn't know whether she should say that to Ferdinand, but over the last few days, he acted like a true friend and like a gentleman. "Veronica, I will do anything you need. Tell Joe that we are going to have a baby. Also, that I love him very much." "Okay, Veronica, I will tell him." Veronica came to her senses and was horrified to realize that her ex-husband was resting on her shoulder. "Joe, have you lost your mind?" she whispered, frightened. "Not now. God forbid. Ferdinand's employees will see us. Then both of us will be in trouble. Be patient, my dear. I won't stay with Ferdinand anymore. As soon as he comes back from Greece, I'll divorce him." So all the puzzle pieces came together. Joseph trusted Ferdinand as he trusted himself. Yes, his way of doing things were specific, but Joseph was sure that his friend would not hurt him. He was so naive. "Sure, my love," Joseph said, wiping away his tears. "I love you." "I love you too," whispered Veronica. "And now I should go. Have you seen Jeremy by any chance?" "Our son." Joseph smiled. "He is in the security office right now." "I see." She grinned. "He's bothering the guards." The last guests left the restaurant, and Joseph hurried to finish his work. He saw his ex-wife and son get into the car, and a wonderful warmth spread over his body. Falling asleep, Joseph sunk back into his thoughts. After spending 10 years in jail instead of another person, he'd managed to survive and be released. Yes, Joseph had no home and no family, but now he was convinced it was only a matter of time. There was a lot of time in jail for him to think about it. "Don't you think you might have been set up by a companion?" Sova, the experienced thief, asked him. "I don't even want to think about it," Joseph confessed. "We grew up in the same orphanage and started at the bottom together." "That's true, but you never know what to expect from people. Actually, we can check on what is going on now." That's how Joseph found out his ex-wife had married Ferdinand. "I asked my best friend to take care of my wife," he thought with bitter irony. So he did. Although there was nothing to be offended about, as it turned out, Ferdinand was raising his son, and the boy lived in luxury. But in fact, he never needed Jeremy. The man wanted the business and Veronica. "Not long ago, I was a bum. I tried not to draw attention to myself," he thought. And who knows how long that would have lasted if it weren't for the accident with Jeremy, my son. Fate brought us together. Veronica headed to meet her spouse from the airport. Today, she would tell Ferdinand that she was leaving him, no matter what. Veronica married him to thank him, except, as it turned out, there was nothing to thank him for. "So, how are you? What did you do while I was away?" Ferdinand asked, getting into the front seat next to his wife. "I'm fine," she answered briefly. "What does Jeremy do?" "What else can he do?" She shrugged her shoulders. "School, gym, computer?" Ferdinand had lunch and went to his office, and Veronica nervously dug her nails into her palms. It turned out that it was not so easy to inform her husband of her decision. It would have been easier to say it to any other person, but it was Ferdinand. She should be careful. It's scary to even think about it. The woman's thoughts were racing frantically, overtaking each other. "Come on, what can he do to me?" That's what Joseph thought. "Joseph, I love Joe, and I want to be with him. I promised him we would be together, which means I have to do it for us. That's so scary." Without coming up with anything, the woman laid down on the couch in exhaustion. Suddenly, she heard her husband's quick footsteps. "Ferdinand, where are you going?" Veronica asked. "I have to go to the main restaurant," her husband answered nervously. The next day, Joseph woke up in a good mood. He had a blissful smile on his face, and the whole restaurant staff looked at him with amazement. The janitor was smiling. "He's even looking prettier," Valerie said. "Maybe he's in love," suggested the cook, handing the tray to the waitress. "Maybe." In the afternoon, there was no trace of Joseph's good mood. He was sweeping the yard when a glossy black SUV pulled into the restaurant and braked sharply. Joseph barely had time to step back. "Hey you, let's go to my office," the boss said as he got out of the car. "Are you talking to me?" Joseph asked. "Are you deaf?" Veronica didn't like the tone of her husband when he answered the question. He seemed to be furious. Head office? Veronica, determined to follow her husband, ran to the second floor to change. She could not go anywhere in her robe. Ferdinand's office was open wide, and Veronica entered it. The laptop was open, and what she saw made her heart beat like crazy. It was a scene of ex-spouses meeting after 10 years apart. Namely, of Joseph embracing Veronica. But the worst part was the open safe. Veronica knew that besides cash and jewelry, there was a gun in there. Now it wasn't there. "What the hell are you doing, bastard? Why the hell were you hugging my wife?" Ferdinand asked. "Do you want to be found in the river with a weight on your leg or with a hole in your forehead? I'll organize that for you right now. And nobody's gonna look for you, bum." Lyons pulled a gun from his pocket and pointed it at Joseph. "Are you sure, Ferdinand Lyons?" Joseph smirked as he looked up at him. "Joseph Darley?" Ferdinand asked, stammering. Joseph, without wasting a minute, snatched a gun from his former friend and business partner. Now Joe was pointing the gun at Ferdinand. "It's good to see you, buddy," Joseph said. "But you—" "What, died in jail? As you can see, I'm alive." "What do you want?" Ferdinand asked. "Money? I'll give you a lot of money, as much as you want. Just, for God's sake, let me live." "I don't want your money or your life," Joseph answered contemptuously. He abruptly pulled his belt from his pants and commanded, "Sit down in the chair." Ferdinand obeyed, and Joseph Darley began to tie his former companion to a chair, still pointing the gun at him. "Okay," Joseph said. "So, shall we talk?" "You're not going to kill me, are you?" Ferdinand asked, looking at him. "Why should I?" The janitor shrugged his shoulders. "I've spent 10 years in jail, and I'm not going back, you know." Joseph took a tape recorder out of his pocket and said, "Well, tell me." "What?" "You know what. Everything that happened. And if you lie..." Joseph shook the gun in front of his boss. "I've always envied you." Ferdinand began to talk, but then fell silent. "Well, I knew that. What's next? Who set me up? Was it you, bastard?" Lyons nodded. "Stop nodding. Do you think you're smarter than everybody else? Who set me up? Say it." "It was me." "How? Tell me everything." "I hired hackers, and they transferred money from the Altair company accounts. Then I made arrangements with fake names." Joseph listened to Lyon's story with a poker face. He didn't seem to care at all about what Ferdinand was saying, but if one of his jail buddies had seen him, he would have said, "Now there's a volcano raging in that man's soul." Veronica raced through the city and even ran a red light. Or was it just her imagination? Anyway, she didn't care about that now. "I hope I get there in time," she prayed. "I hope everything is all right." Veronica entered the restaurant, nearly blowing the security guard off his feet, who said nothing but, "Good afternoon, Veronica Lyons." The door to her husband's office was open, and Veronica thought she had déjà vu. It wasn't an accident in jail. She heard, "I was the one who ordered to kill you, to get rid of you forever, so that no one would find out about it. But there are good people everywhere." Joseph noted, and Veronica sighed in relief. Joe is alive. "There are good people everywhere," he repeated. "Even there. Keep that in mind." Veronica entered the office and looked at her husband squeamishly. "Joe, are you all right?" the young woman asked excitedly. "I'm fine." He smiled. "You are just in time. I am telling your husband why I am alive and not in the grave as he wanted. Well, I was saved, but they buried another convict instead of me. So, as you can see, I have the right connections in the criminal world too. Don't get the wrong idea. The poor guy died of tuberculosis in the jail hospital." Veronica sat down in her chair, covering her face with her hands. Ferdinand stole 10 years of happiness from them. He stole Jeremy's father, and he stole the man she loved. "Well," Joseph said in a satisfied voice, "the confession of Ferdinand Lyons is recorded." The police arrived quickly. A former business partner, unexpectedly back from the dead, broke the strict and tough Mr. Lyons. Upon seeing the police officers, he got hysterical. After listening to the tape recording, the policeman said, turning to Ferdinand, "All in all, it's very clear. All you have to do is write a confession." Ferdinand Lyons was sentenced to 6 years in jail. The sentence was less than Joseph's, but it was enough to give him a taste of jail. And with his abominable temper and arrogance, it would seem like an eternity. Joseph received a large sum of money as compensation, but no amount of money could compensate for the 10 years that were irrevocably cut out of his life. "How handsome you are," Veronica said admiringly, as she met her ex and at the same time her future husband from the beauty salon. "I envy myself." After the plastic surgery, the scar was almost invisible. Veronica joked that scars make a man look better, but Joseph didn't want a single detail to remind him of the past. The past is over. Now a happy future awaited him with his beloved wife and son. In the meantime... Well, Veronica turned to him with a smile. "Are we going to introduce the new CEO and business owner to the staff?" "Let's go." As Joseph and Veronica entered the office, they heard a cheering hum. It was hard to recognize Joseph as the homeless man who had worked as a janitor a few months ago. "Guys, let me introduce you to the new CEO and owner of the restaurant chain," Veronica said solemnly. "Joseph Darley." Some people gasped. They had just realized who had run the business now. For example, Barnabia, the manager who had just recently provided Joseph with a uniform and supervised him, couldn't believe it. Well, life is unpredictable. "Joe, just don't give us too much work," said Edgar. "And sometimes come into our office to play chess and chat." "Right," said Maurice. "All right, guys." "But that's not all the news," Veronica said with a smile. "Joseph and I are getting married in a month. Everyone is invited." The employees applauded. "Veronica, Joseph, congratulations." "We really are happy for you." "You are such a beautiful couple." The atmosphere in the office was cheerful and very warm. Things were different with the previous owner. The staff seemed really happy for Joseph and Veronica, but waitress Valerie felt a little sad. "I missed my chance to get such a great man," she thought. "Maybe I should really think about Maurice." The guard Maurice caught Valerie's gaze and winked at her. The iron must be struck while it is hot. Maurice liked her for a long time. The employees liked the new leader. Joseph, who had finally recovered from his ordeal, turned out to be a very clever man with a great sense of humor. Joseph Darley got back everything that belonged to him: love, business, and his son. But fate returned his happiness with interest. A month after the wedding, Veronica walked into his office with a mysterious expression on her face. "My love, I have something to tell you and show you," she said, sitting down on her husband's lap. You've intrigued me." Joseph smiled, taking off his glasses. "Enough work for today." Veronica pulled a pregnancy test out of her robe pocket, which showed 2 lines. Veronica, is that what I think it is? She nodded with a smile. Wow, Joseph shouted, getting up from his chair, taking Veronica in his arms and hugging her. Wonderful news. When do we tell Jeremy? She asked, looking at her husband with her beautiful, shining blue eyes. Let's enjoy the moment today, just the 2 of us, he whispered. We'll tell Jeremy tomorrow. I know him. He won't be able to sleep if we tell him now. Right, laughed Veronica. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. Joseph, Veronica, and their son Jeremy were walking around the city with little Catalina. It was a weekend family tradition that the Darley family always followed. Jeremy wheeled the stroller with a little pink face peeking out, and the parents walked holding hands. They walked past the building with a digital clock, the same building that had started Joseph's free life. The head of the happy family looked up at the roof of the building and thought that maybe some other bum was now living there. And who knows, maybe he is just like Joseph, recently released from prison. Maybe he settled there because of the clock too. Well, may he be lucky. Joseph wished happiness to the unknown man. After all, everyone has the right to a happy life. Joseph looked at the people he loved most in the world and thought that he had succeeded because he was truly happy.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.